celebrating the power of possibility.
My name is Gwen McKenzie, and I believe and I know anything is possible.
Gwen McKenzie is Vice Mayor of Knoxville, and she's our guest today on Anything is Possible. It is great to see you in this space.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here today.
Where are you from?
I was born in Aiken, South Carolina, but Knoxville, Tennessee is the only home that I've ever known. My dad moved us here when I was 5 years old, so this is home.
Tell me about your family and tell me about growing up.
So my dad was recruited by Whitney Moore Young to be the first executive director of the Urban League here. So that's what brought our family to Knoxville. My mom was a teacher. She taught at Beardsley Junior High School, and then she retired from South Doyle. So I went to schools all over the district. When we first moved to Knoxville, lived on Parkview, went to Park Lowry. It was first being integrated newly around that time. Don't remember a lot about that. Then I went to Chancellor, because my mother worked at Beardsley, went to Sarah Moore Green, went to Beardsley, and then graduated from Houston High School when it was a high school. So I tell people that, representing the 6th district was pretty amazing for me because I have connections across the entire district.
Do you have siblings?
I have 2 brothers. I have a younger brother who was born here in Knoxville, and I have an older brother, of course, who was born in South Carolina.
What kind of girl were you growing up?
Quiet. I was very quiet. I was very shy.
You?
Yes, me. Yes, absolutely.
What were your interests?
I like to read. I like to read a lot. I wasn't an outdoors kind of kid. And so it's amazing that now I love doing yard work. That's part of my therapy. And driving. Love to drive.
So, did you imagine the life that you are living?
Absolutely not.
What did you think? What did that little girl think she was becoming or would be?
So as a little girl, I just knew because I grew up always seeing my parents helping other people. My mom being a teacher, she was always bringing students home, to give them opportunity to tutor them and also to earn some money by babysitting us, because my dad, of course, being executive director of the Urban League, they went to a lot of functions. So amazing opportunities that, we had to get to know other people. And so just helping people in so many different capacities. I remember my dad coming home with bullet holes in his windshield.
For what?
Advocating for the rights of Black people. Think about it. When we moved here, it was 1968. And so the climate, the racial climate was totally different back then. And then also transitioning into the 70s, I remember a cross being burned at the bottom of our street and then in our yard when I was a kid and not understanding what did that mean? Why would someone do that? And my dad said, because they don't like us because we don't look like them.
What's interesting is, my brother drowned as they were integrating a pool in North Carolina.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He came back to life 2 hours later. That's another story,
Wow.
another show.
What a blessing.
But I remember how those men carried themselves through that. They were horribly mistreated, but they found this way to hold their dignity.
Absolutely.
Was that your dad?
Absolutely. Now, unfortunately, my father passed away when he was 38 as a result of injuries from a car accident. He lived 2 weeks, and being, at the time I was 15 when my dad passed away, and thought that my dad was going to live, never imagined. He was an only child, and to this day I say that his mother died of a broken heart because it was nothing for my dad. We'd go to sleep on Friday night, we'd wake up Saturday morning, we'd be at my grandparents' house. My dad would just put everybody, the family in the car, because he was just that kind of son. He actually taught his mother how to drive.
Wow.
Yeah, he taught his mom how to drive. And my grandparents, my grandmother was the librarian of the high school in this little town called Wagner, South Carolina, and my grandfather was the principal.
So you come from educators, people that help people.
Absolutely.
What did losing your father do to you?
It was devastating. I was a daddy's girl. Sometimes it's like you don't think that parents have favorites, but sometimes I think they do. And I know that I was my dad's favorite, and my mother was more partial to boys. And so it was really hard. It was really hard losing my dad.
How did it shape you?
It made me, I think, be a little bit more independent, losing my dad. It made me feel like there was one period of time in my life I felt like I had to be an overachiever to just gain acceptance from my mother, because again, I was always under my dad, not necessarily my mother. That was my brothers. And then I have a younger brother. There's a 10-year difference. And so started becoming more like the little caregiver and babysitter for him more. But it was a hard transition.
What did you think you were going to do?
Well, I really thought that I would end up being a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I always enjoyed, trying to figure out people and help people. I like to listen to people because I was quiet. I was the one that would listen and sometimes give advice. But as life would have it, fell in love with my first boyfriend, came home from college and got married and started a family. And of course, didn't know what love really was, how that goes. And so really went through a transition where I made life a little bit harder than it had to be because I was kind of stubborn. My mom said, if you get married, then don't come back home. Now, she didn't mean that, but I took everything literally.
Right.
And so I was just determined that I was not going to go back home and I wasn't going to ask my mother for help. And so I was blessed that I had a mother-in-law and a family that I married into that was very supportive and helped me raise my children, but I know what it feels like to be a divorced single parent with 3 children. I mean, I've worked 2 full-time jobs before because my mother-in-law was sick. She's passed away, but she suffered from lupus for many, many years and understand the high cost of health care and medication. So it was difficult, but as what people say, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And so I look back over my life and some of those hard-headed, stubborn ways that I had back then, that it really helped shape and mold me and prepared me for what God ultimately had in store for me that I never would have seen coming.
Gwen McKenzie is my guest. You're watching Anything is Possible. Back with more in a moment.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
For anybody that's watching this show today, anyone that's ever lifted my name in prayer, I feel that because that's what sustains me.
Here's what I've noticed about possibility people. They summarize the tough stuff of their lives very quickly and get on to the better stuff. Like there was a lot packed in what you said. You said you got married, you got divorced, you're a single mom raising how many kids?
3.
3 kids. You're working 2 jobs.
Yep.
You're helping to caretake someone that has lupus. That's a whole lot to kind of go, oh yeah, very much sweetheart, and then, right? But it probably didn't feel like that.
No, it didn't.
Did you see the possibility of your life? You are a leader in our community, and you've had a very distinguished business career and political career. Did you see any of this coming? Did you imagine the possibility?
I never imagined it on this level because this level was never something that was on my bucket list of things to accomplish or achieve in life or to serve at this level because I've always given back. I've always worked in some capacity, volunteering, Wesley House. I mean, even at a very young age, I always knew that I needed to give back to help others. Even when I was in situations where I might have needed a little help myself, there's always people who need more than you do. And so that, again, that came from my parents. That helped shape and mold me. And if someone had told me 5 years ago that I would be in a political office, that I would be sitting in this seat talking to you about my life today, I would have bet everything that I own, including the shoes on my feet, and I love shoes, and I would be shoeless today. But here's what I tell people. Be careful what you pray and ask God for, because he's going to answer that prayer. It just may not be the way that you anticipate or want it.
So let me ask you this. You go to school. What'd you study?
Psychology.
So you study psychology. You finish school.
I didn't finish school because I came back home to get married.
Really?
Yes.
So talk about your career path then.
Nothing but God. So amazing that I would have the opportunities that I've had.
So what have you done?
So my first job in high school, as a senior in high school, was at Knoxville College. I was a counselor with Upward Bound. That was a summer job. I really thought I had arrived with that first job. But my first real job was at Y12. That was back when it was Union Carbide. And the Urban League had a program at that time, and it was a training program. And out of that, I became an administrative assistant there. So I had a lot of opportunities working there. Then fast forward, here comes Fort Sanders to now Covenant Health. Tony Spezia, was a mentor, gave me some really good career advice while he was there. And I've always been really big on employee engagement and motivation and encouraging people to be and do more. And I had a couple of employees who said, "Hey, Gwen, there's this new company in town called Caremark." And no, it was Advanced PCS at the time. So on a whim, I applied for a position there. And they made me an offer. I really liked the people there. I loved what they were talking about. Fast forward, that company went from Advanced PCS to Caremark to then CVS Caremark, because Caremark's headquarters was in Nashville. And I, again, was doing a lot of volunteer work at that time, the Love Kitchen and other places. And I remember the president of the Caremark coming to Knoxville, flying in from Nashville. And, we had this wall because I was so big about volunteering and engaging employees. And he wanted to meet the Love Kitchen sisters, and we took him over there. Oh, wow. And he was so amazing. Of course, you know how they are. They just love on anybody that walks in that door. And he dug in his pocket, and he was like, "Well, I don't normally carry cash." And he was like, "But I just happen to have a $100 bill in case of an emergency." And he's like, "But I'm going to send you some more money." And so it was just amazing. So from there, we started a million-hour volunteer campaign across the company at that particular time when we were Caremark. And so I was on a board, Legacy Housing Foundation board, which is an incredible board of people, incredible company, giving back to people who live in housing communities, affordable housing communities, basic needs that people can't afford to get with food stamp EBT cards, and looking for programming to help enhance people's quality of life. And so one particular board meeting, we're talking about, we need to hire an executive director. We had an interim director who was gracious enough to stay for a while, but had retired, Linda Bellman, and wanted to enjoy life. And so we're talking about what they're looking for, and they're like, somebody said, that sounds like you, Gwen, would you be interested? And I'm thinking in my mind, now I'm going to retire from CVS Caremark, because, CVS Health, it's a great company to work for. And I don't know what made me, it must have been God. I said, okay, I'd like to talk more about it. And so during that process and applying for the job, I was made an offer for that position, and just prayed about it. And I thought, gee, am I really now going to get paid to do something that I love, which is helping people? So here I am. So I retired. Circle. Yeah, full circle. So I had enough years at CVS, along with being in my 50s, to retire. So it was pretty cool telling people I was retiring. They're like, "Oh man, you're going to retire. What are you going to do?" I'm like, "I'm going to work to do something I really love now." And so it's been an amazing journey. And
you know what? Yeah. So you start out watching your family help people, right? And so that becomes part of your DNA.
Yes.
And it looks like every step along the way of your professional career, it's help people, help people, help people, and help people who help people,
yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
But politics, oh boy, it can hurt people and it can help people. I want to talk about how you got to that.
Okay.
More on that when we come back. This is Anything is Possible. So, politics?
Politics.
I bet you never thought.
No.
Like, you like to help people.
Yes.
And you don't seem like a person that would want to be in the middle of all of the stuff that happens.
No.
So how does this happen?
So again, that's why I go back to be careful what you pray for, because I was praying and saying, God, what would you have me to do to be a greater blessing to people at this stage in my life? I really believed that it was going to be focused on one particular nonprofit, or maybe start a nonprofit, or look to see what's a greater need. And at the time, I won't go into a lot of detail, but told you I love working in my yard. That's my therapy. Well, my husband is one of those people that says you got to have the right tool for the job. And so we have a big yard. So we have a big industrial lawnmower and a leaf vac and all this kind of stuff. And I love doing that work. Well, I had a freak accident working in my yard. And at that time, God had to sit me still for about 2 weeks to recover.
What happened?
I'm left-handed. For me to have a hand, to have any fingers on my hand today is nothing short of a miracle. But during that process, I'm just still in prayer about God, what would you have me to do? And Mark Brown, who grew up with us, he's my nephew's godfather, who was actually city council person and former vice mayor and was also executive director of the Urban League.
Like your dad, right?
Yeah, and he knew my dad because he and my brother were best friends growing up. He called me one morning and he said, "Hey sis," he said, "I need you to pray about something for me." And I'm like, "Absolutely, what is it?" At the time I'm thinking, is it your mom? Is it your son? What's going on? And he said, "I need you to pray about running for city council." And my quote unquote is, "Why would I want to do something crazy like that?" And I said, "Mark, I do not have a lot of tolerance for foolishness." I'm like, my patience sometimes can run thin. And so he said, well, Gwen, he's like, he started telling me all these things, these qualities that he saw in me, and he's like, you care about people. You're always looking to help people. And he ended it with, and you'd be doing it for the right reason because of your heart. And I said, wow, Mark, I'm so flattered. I'm like, but that's not anything I'm going to pray about because don't have the patience for that. And it's amazing how God works because that same week, so many people were coming to me saying, "Gwen, you ought to run for city council," and still didn't take it seriously. And so this lady, I won't call her name, she knows who she is. She had run for office for county commission, and she called me out of the blue. Hadn't talked to this lady in years, and she's like, "Gwen McKenzie, how in the world are you?" I'm like, "I'm fine. How are you? What's going on?" And she said, "You need to run for city council."
Wow.
And I said, "So why is that?" She said almost verbatim what he said. And she's like, "I've been watching you from a distance. I know people who serve on boards with you." And she's like, I think you would be doing it for the right reason. I almost dropped the phone. So at that point, I knew that God was serious, that I needed to start praying about it. So talked to my husband, talked to my family, talked to, my close circle of friends. I just needed one of those people to say, "No, Gwen, you don't need to do that." And I wouldn't have done it. I was still looking for an out because I really hadn't embraced it. And so when 12 people were in that race, I'm like, "Okay, God, are you sure this is what you want me to do?" And I'm real competitive, right? But I guess God said, don't doubt me, because I was the number one vote getter in the primary. And I'm not one of these self-righteous, super religious people, but that's my foundation.
Yeah, you can see it come through as you've been navigating the violence that has been happening. I've just been seeing your heart and your spirit and your faith on display, and your love of community. And it's amazing to see how God has used you, how God has developed all this possibility.
Absolutely.
And so, Senator Harris, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know if you've gotten that yet, have you?
Vice President now,
President
okay.
Harris. No, but there's something special going on with you, Gwen. Do you recognize it? Do you see? Because I've been around this stuff for a really long time. I've seen it from the inside out. I know what we see on the surface is not near what happens behind the scenes, but God has given you this special grace with people. You're able to get people in the room and get them talking and get them thinking. Do you feel like you're being used by God?
Absolutely.
Can you feel it?
I do. And I just want to take a moment for anybody that's watching this show today, anyone that's ever lifted my name in prayer. I feel that, because that's what sustains me. I feel that. And so that's also what led me to start the Faith Leaders Initiative. That came about during COVID, because, that's my base, that's my foundation. So I'm calling all the pastors, when COVID first hits, saying, "Hey, I want to make sure that you're aware of everything and all the resources, and also how important it is to get tested." And so in the midst of that, Cynthia Finch calls me and says, "Hey, I'm working on this plan, pray, and prepare for churches and church leaders. We got to make sure that they're educated, and when they can go back there." So she and I are the co-founders of the Faith Leaders Initiative. We started it May of 2020. It's a weekly call that is still going on today. And it's transformed now into education around vaccinations. And it's not any denomination. It's just faithful, just people of faith. It started out, primarily about African American community and communities of color, but it's for all people. But we're very specific, and now we're just so blessed how God's in it. Dr. Keith Gray is our medical advisor. He's on the call.
He's fantastic.
He is an amazing person. And so God is just, I see how God is using me to align and connect people of faith and to bring out the best in people. And so you ask anybody, if they call and they have a great idea and they're doing something good and they want to help, because I tell people, I'm one person and one person can't do everything, but when we work together, when we align, anything's possible.
Anything is possible.
Yeah, especially with faith.
Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm really praying that God will bless you as you go forward, and that everything you touch, I think the possibility is unleashed in people when you see their potential and you help them realize it.
Absolutely.
And that's why helping people help people,
Absolutely.
helping people help people.
Absolutely.
That through line is the through line of possibility. So thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. Halloran, thank you for having me, and thank you for all that you do.
I think your dad would be really proud of you right now.
Well, my dad and my mom, people tell me all the time the prayers of my mother are being answered in my life now, and I receive that.
Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.